Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Amazon rainforest.
Ooh,
But not for the reasons you might think.
right.
We're not talking about the exotic animals or the amazing plant life. We're diving into its history, the history of the people who live there.
Yeah, a history that most people don't even know exists.
Exactly. Because what if I told you that under that dense canopy of trees, there used to be sprawling cities, complex societies, civilizations that rival some of the greatest ones we know?
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is. And to help us explore this hidden world, we're going to be looking at Lawrence Blair's work. He's a journalist and author who just released a book called Patria,
Mm.
and it's all about these lost civilizations of South America.
He also did a podcast episode called The Ancient Amazon, where he talks about this.
Perfect. So let's start with this. For centuries, we've had this image of the Amazon as this untouched wilderness.
Right, the pristine rainforest.
But Blair says that's actually a misconception, and it's blinded us to the true history of the region.
You know, it's interesting how that perception took hold. If you think back to the early European explorers, guys like Francisco de Orellana or Amerigo Vespucci, they wrote about encountering these large organized settlements.
Along the Amazon River.
Yeah, and some even compared them to European cities in terms of their size and complexity.
But those accounts were largely ignored.
Oh, absolutely.
Why do you think that is?
Well, back then, people just couldn't fathom the idea of advanced civilizations existing in the Amazon. It was much easier to hold on to this romantic notion of the noble savage living in harmony with nature.
So the myth of the land without history was born.
And unfortunately, it persisted for centuries.
Which is crazy because we have the evidence right in front of us.
Mm.
It's just hidden under a very thick layer of jungle.
Literally.
But thanks to technology that's changing.
LiDAR, right.
Yeah, LiDAR is basically this remote sensing technology. It lets archaeologists see through all that dense foliage and create detailed 3D maps of what's underneath.
And what they're finding is incredible.
It really is. Entire cities, road systems, agricultural infrastructure.
It's like uncovering a lost world.
It's like something out of an Indiana Jones movie.
Right.
One of the most fascinating discoveries was in Ecuador.
In the Upano Valley,
Yeah.
they found a network of over 6,000 mounds and platforms and settlements.
Dating back to 500 BC.
Yeah. We're not talking about just a few scattered villages here. This was a vast, interconnected society.
That thrived for centuries.
And it was all right under the shadow of a volcano,
the Sangay volcano.
one of the most active volcanoes in the world.
So not only did these people create this advanced society, they did it while living on the edge of a potential natural disaster.
It really makes you wonder about their beliefs and their relationship with nature.
Did they view the volcano as a destructive force?
Hmm.
Or as a powerful deity? I mean, the pottery they left behind gives us some clues.
Oh, yeah. Pottery is so important for understanding these cultures.
Blair talks about how the sheer quantity and variety of ceramics found in the Amazon suggests that these weren't just nomadic groups.
They were settled communities with skilled craftspeople, people who had a deep understanding of their environment.
He calls one particular site in Brazil a crucible of civilization.
Teotonio.
Yeah.
That one.
It's fascinating because they found evidence of long-term habitation there, going back thousands of years, plus sophisticated pottery techniques,
Uh-huh.
evidence of early crop domestication, and even signs of urban planning.
And here's the really mind-blowing part. Blair suggests that Teotonio could be the origin point for the Arawak and Tupi people.
Wow.
And their influence spread across the entire continent.
Think about it for a second. Words that we use every day, like barbecue, canoe, even hurricane.
They all have roots in Arawak and Taino languages.
That's
It
incredible.
really highlights the lasting impact of these Amazonian cultures, even on our own language and culture today.
Absolutely.
So we've seen how these ancient societies were far more complex than we thought. But I'm really curious about how they actually lived. What did they eat? How did they organize themselves?
All good questions. And how do they utilize the Amazon River itself? Because that's such a defining feature of the region.
Well, that's a great place to pick up next time.
I can't wait. Welcome back to our deep dive, everybody. Last time we were talking about all those amazing LiDAR images, you know, the ones showing those sprawling settlements hidden under the jungle.
Yeah, amazing stuff.
Total changes how you think about the Amazon, doesn't it?
For sure.
But one thing that I kept thinking about was this terra preta soil that Blair mentioned. What is that exactly?
Well, it's not just regular dirt. It's this super fertile soil packed with nutrients that makes plants just thrive.
Okay, but what makes it so special?
It's man-made.
What?
Yeah, ancient Amazonians actually created this soil.
How is that even possible?
Well, over generations, they mixed in things like charcoal, pottery shards, even food scraps and fish bones.
So it's kind of like composting on a massive scale.
Exactly. And Blair suggests that this terra preta was crucial for how these large societies thrived in the Amazon.
I mean, if they had these densely populated cities, they would need a reliable way to produce a lot of food.
Right, and terra preta could have been their secret weapon.
It makes you wonder if we could use something like that today.
You know, with all the problems we have with soil depletion.
Yeah. Could terra preta be a solution for the future of agriculture?
Well, some scientists are actually exploring that right now.
Wow.
And the coolest part is that this ancient practice isn't lost. There are indigenous groups in the Amazon who still create and use terra preta today.
Really? Like who?
The Kikuro people in Brazil.
So they're like a direct link to this ancient knowledge.
Yeah. They've been doing this for centuries. They create these large mounds called mittens, and they meticulously compost organic waste to enrich the soil.
I mean, it's amazing that they've kept this tradition alive.
And their knowledge could be really valuable as we look for ways to improve soil health.
So terra preta was obviously a big part of their agriculture. But what else did they eat?
Oh, they had a pretty diverse diet. Cassava, sweet potatoes, Brazil nuts.
It sounds pretty good, actually.
All sorts of peppers, fruits. They even had tobacco.
Tobacco.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Blair says they were even domesticating cacao way back in 6000 BC.
Cow. As in chocolate.
The one and only.
So they were enjoying chocolate way before anyone else.
But it shows how ingenious they were. They understood how to use the rainforest's bounty.
They weren't just clearing the land to plant crops.
No, they were working with nature, cultivating useful species within the existing ecosystem.
It sounds like a much more sustainable approach than what we do today.
Right. They understood that a healthy forest meant a healthy food supply and a thriving community.
It's something we could definitely learn from. But sadly, these societies did eventually decline. We talked about climate change as one possible factor. But Blair also mentioned something called the rubber boom.
Oh yeah, the rubber boom was a pretty dark period in Amazonian history.
What happened?
Well, in the late 19th century, the demand for rubber just exploded.
Because of the Industrial Revolution.
Exactly. Everyone needed rubber for tires and all sorts of things, and the Amazon was seen as this valuable source.
So I'm guessing that led to some exploitation.
Oh yeah, big time. European and American companies rushed into the Amazon.
To cash in on the rubber boom.
They established huge rubber plantations, often displacing or even enslaving indigenous people to work on them.
So basically a classic tale of greed and exploitation.
Sadly, yeah.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of all this amazing human ingenuity, there's also a dark side to history. It makes me think about those uncontacted tribes that still exist in the Amazon. How do they fit into all of this?
That's a really good question. And Blair suggests that some of these groups might be descendants of those ancient civilizations.
So they could be the descendants of the people who built those cities and created Terra Preta.
It's possible. And they might have retreated deeper into the rainforest to escape the horrors of things like the rubber boom.
To preserve their way of life.
Exactly.
It's incredible that they've managed to stay hidden for so long.
It really is.
It's like they're a living embodiment of that ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
The wisdom of living in balance with nature.
And that's a wisdom that we could all learn from.
I think you're right. So we've talked about the rise and fall of these incredible civilizations, their amazing agriculture, even the tragedy of their exploitation. But as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I keep coming back to this question. What can we learn from them? What wisdom did they possess that we seem to have lost?
Well, that's a perfect question to ponder as we head into the final part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, everyone. All right, so we're back. And I have to say, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
Yeah, it really makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about the Amazon.
For sure.
Oh.
I mean, who knew there were these advanced civilizations thriving there for centuries? But as we wrap up our exploration, I want to look ahead. We've seen how these societies lived in balance with their environment. So what lessons can we learn from them, especially as we face our own environmental challenges today?
Well, they managed to thrive for so long, and they did it sustainably. They respected the rainforest ecosystem.
Blair keeps mentioning agroforestry as a key part of their success.
Yeah, agroforestry is all about integrating trees and plants into agriculture.
So instead of just clearing land and planting one crop, like we do with a lot of modern farming.
They worked with the existing forest. They cultivated useful species within the ecosystem.
So they were basically working with nature instead of against it.
Exactly. And they understood that a healthy forest meant a healthy food supply, clean water, a stable climate.
They didn't see the forest as something to be exploited.
They saw it as a partner.
And unfortunately, we've kind of lost that connection, haven't we?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways we see nature as something separate from ourselves, something to be controlled or dominated.
And that's led to a lot of problems.
Deforestation, climate change, all these things are symptoms of that disconnect.
So how do we get back to that way of thinking, that ancient wisdom of living in harmony with nature?
Well, I think we can learn a lot from the Amazonian example. Look at Terra Preta. It's proof that humans can actually improve the environment, not just deplete it.
And remember those indigenous groups we talked about?
Yeah.
The ones still practicing these ancient techniques.
The Kokoro people.
Yeah. They're showing us that these methods aren't just relics of the past.
They're actually viable solutions for the future.
Blair even suggests that indigenous knowledge could be crucial for fighting climate change.
Oh, yeah. He mentions the COP conference in Belém, Brazil.
That's a big deal, right?
Huge. And it's fitting that they're holding a climate conference in the Amazon,
It's like these ancient civilizations are sending us a message.
reminding us to remember what's important.
Balance, respect, interconnectedness.
Exactly. And that message is more relevant than ever.
We're facing all these huge challenges. But we have a chance to learn from the past,
To be inspired by those who came before us.
to find a better way forward. So what's the takeaway for our listeners today?
I'd say the most important thing is to remember that we are part of nature, not separate from it,
We can't survive without recognizing that connection.
and finding ways to live in harmony with the natural world.
Powerful stuff. That's it for our deep dive into the Amazon. I hope everyone enjoyed the journey.
If you want to learn more, definitely check out Lawrence Blair's book, Patria.
It'll give you even more insights into these lost civilizations. And who knows what other secrets are still out there waiting to be discovered.
That's the exciting part.
The story of the Amazon is still being written. So keep exploring, stay curious, and let the whispers of the past guide us towards a more sustainable future. Until next time, everyone.